Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona. Let's go with the first question, Pia.
Ajahn, our first question today from the live stream is from Abstract Mind. Buddhism rejects determinism and states that we can make effort, but how does that contradict determinism? Intentions are caused by an adjacent prior mind moment, which directly gives rise to the next moment, actions. Any novel event, independent of a prior cause, whether nama or rupa, on the other hand, contradicts cause and effect. Making effort, too, must be conditioned itself to remain compatible.
Yes, it's a question which has perplexed people for millennia, determinism and free will. Most of the arguments, if you follow a strict logic, course of logic, it's very hard to escape from the idea of determination. And I won't go into attempts to refute determinism by logic. The Buddha uses logic sometimes, but is on other occasions a pragmatist, pragmatic philosopher. And what he says is, you can make effort. It's obvious to everybody that people change, and they recall the process of change sometimes being very easy and sometimes being difficult and requiring continuous practice and effort. And you can, in all areas, practical areas of life, we can see that practice changes your capacities. Repeating, if you're a tennis player, if you first of all, you get instruction, by the way, so some people are self-taught, and quite often they stagnate. Because they're self-taught, they only come to a certain level and can't go beyond that. You get sometimes counterintuitive directions from a teacher or something like that, and you progress. So that's what Buddhism is very pragmatic. It's not, you're not waiting for grace from God. So remember, in the Catholic tradition, many of the Christian traditions, you have free will, and because they have to give you moral agency, but your own salvation is out of your capacity and must be delivered without you deserving it from God. Buddhism has nothing to do with any of those things. Buddhism is saying, look, people who practice this way and exercise this way obviously get good results, and that's all that matters. If you distract yourself with logical paradoxes and logical games, you will delay your progress. This is why the Buddha says, do not contemplate whether the universe had a beginning or is eternal, whether it's infinite in space or finite in space. These questions cannot be resolved by the human mind, by logic. It's outside of calculation. Also, you should not be convinced by mere logic that you are predetermined and there's nothing you can do about it, and everything you do about it is as a result of predetermination. And there were philosophers at the time that advocated that. The Buddhists just stepped around the whole issue and said, look, you can make effort. You will feel the effort you make, and you will get results. So therefore I say, focus on what you can actually experience, the pragmatic experience, and don't worry about these paradoxes. There are all kinds of paradoxes in that period of time. Logicians in Greece as well. It's obvious this paradox of motion that comes up in Greek philosophy, where before you can go to, that you can't actually move, because before you move from between A and B, you must move half the distance from A to B. And then before you move half the distance, you have to have half the distance of that, etc. Goes into infinity, and it proves the impossibility of motion. Who believes that? Do you believe that you can't move? It's logical. It's compelling logic. And it means nothing. You move. And the same with progress in the psychological and spiritual dimension. The other thing, though, so usually we say it's not it's not rigidly predetermined, but it is conditioned. So we can feel the conditioning as well. We feel the conditioning, the compulsion of habits. And you try to quit smoking, for instance. You decide it's not good for you. It's clear to you that you want to, and yet, from time to time, you smoke again in spite of the fact that you have clearly determined not to. But it doesn't mean that it is impossible to quit smoking and impossible to get over the desire to quit smoking. No, you can put in causes, and there's causes pulling you in the direction of smoking, and there's causes pulling you in the direction of non-smoking. It's multiple causes. And you are conditioning, adding more weight to certain causes than other causes through a variety of methods. And so, yes, there is a lot of causality, a lot of somewhat less than rigid determinism. And we could say that however we describe this, it's still determinism. And that would be, logically, you will get an A in your logic class at university. At the same time, step out of the class and you will go about your business making choices because you cannot ever actually live with integrity, presuming that you are rigidly determined. You can't authentically feel that you are rigidly determined. So yes, there's all these wonderful discussions on determinism versus, quote, free will. I don't think that the Buddha would talk about free will. I think he would talk about that there's in practical matters, there is clear that we are conditioned, and that the conditioning can be harnessed in different directions. That's all that he says. And you can see the practical results of this is clear. So he would bypass the whole argument, saying you can do this. And that's exactly what he says. Monks, you should make effort. If you could not make effort, monks, I would not say make effort. But because you can make effort, therefore, O monks, I say make effort. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Next question from the live stream is from Niles in Brazil. Would an anagami lose interest in his livelihood as a creative writer? Dhamma is essential, but literature also gives meaning to life.
Yes, an anagami would lose interest in being a creative writer. And quite often, people in the arts can't imagine life without their art. You know, they're musicians or artists, poets, creative people, and they really can't conceive of life without that creative thing. And it's quite often praised as the most beautiful thing in the planet, and the gives meaning to life, and all of this kind of stuff. And that's why some artists quite often are blocked from going on the deconditioning spiritual life. They're afraid to lose their relationship to art. They identify as an artist. And so that is exactly what happens. They will lose their the meaning, the meaningfulness of their art and they will no longer identify as an artist. And that seems, it's hard to understand, but that's exactly what spiritual liberation is. You're no longer dependent on value through art, creativity of any kind. And the motivation will completely fall away as a result of this liberation. You will be no longer having to do art or relying on it as meaning in your life. However, you can do creative acts with even after you're enlightened, but it doesn't have value or meaning to you. It's simply an expedient to maybe to teach others and so forth. Designing a monastery or something like this for the benefit of others to that it would help their mind, help understand Dhamma. You might even do creative writing that helps people come into Dhamma, but it's just a tool for transmitting knowledge rather than a meaningful, finding meaning in life through that process. And that is the Buddha. After his enlightenment, he did consider not teaching, and he could have blissed out for the rest of his life and not taught. And there are species of Buddha called Pacceka Buddhas that do that. But he became aware that he was certainly capable of convincing some people and improving their lives. So he did that out of compassion, not out of creative desire. So you will see creativity coming out of Buddhist cultures, even from enlightened people, but it's not because it's meaningful or anything like that. It's just it's means to an end. It's skillful means. That's all it is. Yeah. Recently, I'm going to go on with this a bit. A couple of monks from Clear Mountain Monastery, Nisabo and Kovilo, came up and interviewed me about our library. And we were talking about Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, which is a sort of a poetic narrative around a book, a novel around the Buddha in his before he's the Buddha, seeking enlightenment, and very beautiful. It's a work of art, etc. And I praised him as an author. The book is not very accurate about Buddhism. It's not a great way to learn about it. But a lot of people have been brought into curiosity about Buddhism because they read the novel, So in that case, it was valuable. Hermann Hesse, though, in spite of winning the Nobel Prize for Literature, was not enlightened, and I'm sure he was more or less a compelled artist. That was his life. The meaning of his life is in creative writing. So, but it does not. It's not enlightenment. Enlightenment frees you from those types of artistic compulsions as well. That particular the art structure is classified within the sensuous heavens. It's the fifth level of the sensory heavens, where music and art and all those kind of things abide. And there's one level above that. That's the managers of the artist. Here, as you notice, that there's these people behind the scenes pulling strings that are agents, and they control the art, and that's the next level up. But it's all within the sensory heavens, and is short of the levels of the first JHANA, the form realms, meditative form realms above that, let alone the full enlightenment. It's a marvelous categorization of the levels of consciousness, and and what is the highest possible levels, and right down to the lowest possible levels. Yeah.
Next question from the live stream is from Mr. H in Bristol, United Kingdom. Dear Ajahn, does it matter what happens to the body once we pass away and leave it behind? For example, does how and where it's buried affect future lives?
And what happens to the body is irrelevant. However, people are attached to what happens to the body after death. And so it can, the type of, what you do with a body after death can affect other people's minds, and even the mind of the departed if they're attached to the body. So it shouldn't have any, it's not relevant. The body, there's a little chant that monks do at funerals, and it's basically that all things are impermanent. This consciousness has departed from this body. It lies upon the ground like a log of wood. You know, it's a log of wood. That's all it is. And that's in order to get people pried away from their body. You know, they're attached to it. So just it's irrelevant. It's just a piece of wood on the ground. There's a very interesting process in some Buddhist countries, particularly Thailand, where when people die of violence, and sometimes just from sudden accident at what we would call an untimely death, especially by violence, they don't cremate the body right away. They keep it in a grave, and up to a year, and then cremation can take place. And the reason why is that the person doesn't realize they've been killed. They're still attached to their body. They still identify with their body, and they're kind of, that's what we call a ghost, and a disruptive kind of ghost. This ghost is angry about the whole death process, by violence, and is not reconciled to the situation. So they hang around, and they're furious, and they cause destruction, and weird things happen. So in some cases, the body is brought to a monastery and left there to decompose naturally, and the monks can watch the decomposition process as a lesson for their own spirituality, for the nature of the body. And the Buddha recommends this process of watching bodies decompose and saying, as that body becomes, so my body will become, this body will become. So it's an interesting structure built right into the society. Christianity does not approve of cremation, as far as I understand. I think Judaism doesn't like cremation either. And the reason behind it is instead of a belief in reincarnation, they have a belief in resurrection. And it's the resurrection of the physical body by some miraculous means, you know. And there's even a concern about amputations or parts of the body missing. If a person is killed by violence, they would try to bury all the parts of the body so they can be reassembled when the time comes. So that's a very interesting thing to contemplate, is that the roots of some Judaic streams and Christian streams are about resurrection rather than reincarnation or rebirth. And it's a very literal, and the resurrection is going to take place on earth. So the body will be restored, and you will be in a garden type situation. the descriptions of heaven in Christianity are very vague and undetailed. Like in the New Testament, it's more or less, it seems to be a resurrection on earth. And only later, like in the 12th century, do they start sketching out the types of heaven, what heavens would be in great detail. Buddhism, 500 years before Christianity, has an extremely precise and elaborate description of all the natures of heavens and earths and so forth, and they insist that this process happens by rebirth rather than by resurrection. So yes, it has some bearing, but it's purely psychological. The body itself is irrelevant. We don't think it's going to be resurrected in any way whatsoever. Yeah.
Next question is from Ed in Portland, Oregon, United States. Ajahn Sona, how do you sustain the energy to speak and teach the Dhamma? Do you enjoy teaching? Is this something which has changed for you over time?
So now I've been a monk for 36, is it 36 or is it 37? 36 years. And 36 years ago, when I was studying with Bhante Gunaratana, who is now 97, and so he would have been in the robes for 77 years. And he was a novice before that for 8 years, so he's been 80-something years. At that time, he was well over 40 years in the robes. He said, I never get tired of Dhamma. It's energizing. I've been teaching this stuff. I've been living this lifestyle at that time for over 50 years, and it never gets old. And I was quite impressed by that. And this is what I find too, is that it never gets old. Somehow when I start talking Dhamma and so forth, it energizes me. And that could be dangerous because I could go on and 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 on. My technicians are laughing at me because they know the danger of igniting me with a question, and then they have to, with drifting off to sleep while I complete the full and exhaustive explanation. But yes, it is energizing still. Yes, let's go on before I go on. Yeah.
Ajahn, the next question is from the live stream from Chloe in Portland, Oregon, United States. Dear Ajahn, did Bhante G miss your point about right effort, or would you still recommend his books?
Well, I'm not sure about his books. He's many, many books. You might be referring to Mindfulness in Plain English. And Mindfulness in Plain English was written a long time ago. It was written in 1988. And it was not written directly by Bhante G. It was written, I can't remember his name, John, somebody or other, who is a technical writer. I mean, after all, it's in what was necessary was plain English. Bhante G, his second language is English, or maybe I don't know how many languages he speaks, but he had done well to learn English as well as he did, but his English was not plain English, American plain English. But he taught, and he was a teacher for many years before that, for sure. He'd been teaching for probably 30 years before that. And this fellow was benefiting from his talks on mindfulness, especially the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And so this man, John Petticord, I think his name was, he was a technical manual writer. That was his job, is putting things into plain English. So he decided that this was so beneficial that he wanted to put it into plain English. So he wrote this manuscript and then just gave it to Bhante G. And so I remember it was just a manuscript, and Bhante G, I was there, it was 1988, and he gave it to me to read. He said, "What do you think of this?" And I read it, and I came back and said to him, "This is a bestseller." Like, this is so well written in the kind of vernacular of America, really accessible. But I wouldn't stand by the descriptions in there as, an accurate description of, a complete description of what mindfulness is. Mindfulness, what he's trying to, more or less an Abhidhamma description of mindfulness, where what is mindfulness? It's the capacity to pay attention, etc. But that doesn't really describe what right mindfulness is. And right mindfulness always involves right effort. The sixth factor of the path. Right mindfulness is the seventh factor. Right effort is the sixth, and it suggests that you must hook your mindfulness to a specific task and a very purposeful type of effort. And then it is right mindfulness. So that may not be emphasized enough in that in that book. And that's kind of why I've written some books on right effort, is to make sure that Bhante G is very much on board with right effort. He was very clear about that. He may not have realized, I think he thought that what the West needs, first of all, is an introduction to the benefits of lucidity about what's going on in your mind and what you're doing, that awareness. He always taught right effort, certainly in the monastery, but you can't teach everything. You have to teach something. So that's where that goes. But he's very much totally on board with right effort. That is very clear. But that book has, I think it has become it is maybe the best-selling Buddhist book of all time. I think it was probably sold 1 million copies. It's still up there. And then there's a whole series called, this in plain English series, like right effort in, is it right effort? No, it's right. The Four Foundations of Mindfulness in plain English, which I edited. And again, when you teach Dhamma, you can't teach everything at once. You have to just select out of a large, vast corpus of teachings and then teach that. But it doesn't mean that it's isolated from other things. So that's the problem. And I just was trying to fill in the blanks that we really have to focus now on right effort, explaining right effort to the West and Americans so that they don't gallop off into the sunset just with mindfulness. Yeah.
Next question from the live stream is from Miroku. Do you recommend exploring other spiritual teachings once one has penetrated the Dhamma? For example, would someone who has obtained stream entry benefit from studying Zen Buddhism or Greek philosophy?
They might benefit from these things. It might clarify some things. The stream enter is the first stage of enlightenment, and they still have aspects of Dhamma to develop. And if they get some insights out of looking at these things, that's fine. Or they might, they don't just give up accumulation of knowledge in general. They won't. You can be a stream enter. Of course, you might be a family person, has 5 kids and a job, and you're going to have to, in order to improve your livelihood, you might have to go back to university and study mathematics or biology or something like that. So it's not that you can't, that you don't need to access any other information in the world. It's just that certain realizations have come about what it is that liberates you. You understand that liberation comes through your own personal insights and wisdom, and it doesn't come from any other source. And that distinguishes you from all the religious structures which advocate that salvation comes from grace or an external agency, etc., or from rites and rituals. So that's another thing that is let go, is the ancient world was saturated with the belief that rites and rituals, spells and all kinds of weird and wonderful rituals are the ultimate way to salvation of some sort. And that simply disappears at stream entry. You no longer believe that these external rites and rituals are what liberates you. It's only by understanding that you're liberated. Your wisdom liberates you. But doesn't mean that you cease from benefiting from various types of knowledge or reflections as well.
Next questions are from the live stream, and there are two similar ones. The first is from Zuri in Cambridge, England. Could you give me some advice for renewing my meditation practice? I'm even having a difficult time getting out of bed in the morning. And the second question is from Robert in Romania. Is energy or persistence innate? How to bring more energy to meditation and life in general?
There's two questions?
There's similar questions dealing with energy and meditation.
Yeah, well, I'll just deal with Zuri's question strictly about how to get out of bed in the morning. Yeah. So there's two options here. One is you're doing something that you don't want to do, and that's why you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. You're not energized by your choice in life. And I think your choice in life is you're at some major university doing academic work. And that often happens if you're writing a thesis. Like, it's one of the most dreadful. That's why I find people who have done or completed a PhD, quite often, one of the characteristics they have is the capacity to persist. You've got to have endurance, patient endurance, and put up with a lot of difficulties in order to get through that. So, but I'm not sure that everybody should finish their thesis, should finish their master's or their doctorate. I don't, and some people have, they look back, they quit halfway through, and they look back and rejoice on that decision. They say, I was committed to something that it wasn't what I wanted to do. So that's part of it, is that you have to decide, do I really want to do this? And if I do, I'm going to have to persist through some drudgery, real drudgery. Academic stuff can be drudgery. So it can be beautiful and exciting as well, but it can be drudgery as well. The second thing is, if you decide that you are going to persist in this, then you're going to have to change your attitude towards it, and get some joy, more joy in your ordinary life. And so here's some of the techniques. So one of them is to make the period before you go to bed to really take care of yourself with loving kindness, to generate thoughts of goodwill towards yourself and towards others. Whatever works in terms of bringing people and situations to mind that really warm up the heart, and encompass you as well, taking really good care of yourself so that you go to sleep on a high note, on a good note, so that you get a good night's sleep. And it should alter even your dream life. So this is a tactic which enhances your waking up. So remember the first 3 benefits of loving kindness, if practiced greatly. 1 sleeps well, 1 wakes well, 1 does not have bad dreams. So you want a good night's sleep, and you want to wake well because you've had a good night's sleep. The second thing is that you should arrange some things that to be kind to yourself the first thing when you wake up. So you enter the world with a welcome, And this is like a mother knows this about a child. When the child wakes up, they need to wake up to warmth and joy and maybe nutriment as well, so that it's a joy to wake up. All kinds of people, they wake up to a job that they don't like, and they drag themselves out of bed in a rough way. It's you've been under the covers, it's nice and warm. Now you got to step out into this cold situation, and they don't have anything prearranged in the morning, so they have to grimly put on their clothes and go out into the cold world and maybe slap down a bit of coffee on the way. And it's not a thoughtful way to enter life. You need to prepare the previous evening for a pleasant welcome to the world. So maybe a nice flask of warm water beside the bed, a thermos with a washcloth, nice dry washcloth, and you can just pour it on once you wake up. Give yourself, by the way, wake up with at least a 20-minute time when you don't have to get out of bed. So you just sit up in bed warmly, and then get nice damp warm washcloth and wipe your face, wipe your eyes, and so forth. And then you should have something to drink to freshen up the mouth as well, right there, so that you have time, and maybe even either some music or some inspiring Dhamma that you just on your phone or your recording, you can play it to bring you into this world in a civilized fashion. So what do you look forward to? What would you look forward to as the first period of waking? What do you like? What makes it a pleasant experience to look forward to rather than a dreadful experience? So make that first period of the day, the warm period of the day, something that you really look forward to and is comfortable and not a grim experience. And so spend some creative time thinking about that and arranging that so that you're looking forward to your favorite period of time is just when you wake up, and that gradual emergence from the sleep state to the wide awake state with refreshment and kindness, etc., and then a particular kindness practice towards yourself through thoughts before you go to sleep as well. So focus on those 2 periods, just before sleeping, the last hour of the evening, and the first 20 minutes of the day after waking up. Yeah.
Next question is from Marcus in Santa Monica, California, United States. How does the recognition of impermanence make loss more bearable? Is enlightenment a state of radical independence and self-sufficiency, or is it an experience involving relationship and connection?
Yeah, the mere fact of impermanence, everybody, even a 5-year-old, if you ask them, do you know that people die? And they say, yeah, I know that. So people say they know that everybody dies, but they don't. And that's why the Buddha is saying what seems to be very obvious things. Do you not know that that people are prone to illness and aging? Do you not know that people age? Everybody, like a 10-year-old will say, look, I know that people get sick, and I could get sick. I know that I'm going to age, that I'm going to be 11 next year. That's aging. You don't have to be 92 yet. 11 is a process of aging. And I know, yeah, I've heard it. I know I'm going to die, etc. So this is what the Buddha is asking people to reflect on. It seems like too obvious to reflect on is illness, aging, death, and then the last one is loss, that because of the impermanence of this process, that you lose everything in the end. Almost everybody will say, yeah, I know that. But to know and not to do is not to know. So you say you know, but then you seem absolutely shocked when it happens. Like, apparently you didn't know. You said you knew, but you didn't know. Because why are you shocked? So it's the Buddha is saying, this knowledge has to be made real so that you're not grabbing onto things that are going to be jerked out of your hands. This is if you've been canoeing, you get drifting along in the river, and sometimes you want to. It's getting a little out of control, so people grab a branch or something, and it sort of pulls you out of the canoe. You want to stop, but it's not possible. Or skiing, where you try to grab a tree as you're going by to get you under control, is a bad thing to do. It's the wrong approach. You are committed to motion, and you're just going to have to navigate the motion. Try to keep your balance in the motion as well as you possibly can. And it's not satisfactory to try to grab things. It will cause more distress. So you have to internalize it to the point where you are detached. Now, detached doesn't mean you don't care. So that's not giving up care. Care is a beautiful thing, but it's in motion. You care in motion, and you care with the full realization this too shall pass. This also shall pass in each case. But the warm expression of loving kindness, or the warm expression of compassion, celebration of people's accomplishments and joy in the joy of others, or the quietness of balanced equanimity. These are all sterling good emotions which are not in conflict with the reality of impermanence. And you will not suffer when things disappear, and because you fully knew they would. Yeah.
Next question from the live stream is from Snickersnack111. Dear Ajahn, how best to regard one's family? I find myself easily angered with my children, although I would not be as engaged today with the Thai forest tradition had I not had a disabled child.
Yes, suffering is the cause for the rising of faith, the Buddha says. Sometimes so you get in a situation and you're a parent, and being a parent is not just a joy, it's a huge burden as well. Like, you're responsible for these helpless beings' lives, and they're not always appreciative. Sometimes they have no appreciation. Sometimes it's later on. You think about your own parents, and you think, when you're maybe 40 or something, you've had your own kids, you think, geez, I didn't appreciate my parents, what they went through, because I didn't know. And it's only once you go through it, then you think, oh yeah, they did a good job. They did it the best they could, So these are stuff that you can't know, and your kids can't appreciate what you're going through, especially with a disabled child. And that suffering, that grinding work that is demanded of you, and quite often no appreciation shown for that work, it makes you seek a solution. And of course, you say that the Thai forest tradition has become important to you. Well, the Thai forest tradition is hopefully grounded in the Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha, because this is what he's saying. The life is can bring tremendous amounts of very unrewarding experiences that are really exhausting and difficult and painful, and we need a solution. Can we find an emotional solution? Can we find a heart that's at peace in the midst of this? So this is what you are touching on in the Thai forest tradition, but you're still angry, and you have to understand that it's the wrong thing to do to yourself. It is your internal disabled child. You are disabling yourself by anger. If you let go of that anger, you will have more or less performed a miracle of healing. That inner child that is also disabled will walk, will be healed. So this is the miracle. Sometimes these miracles that you read about in the New Testament and so forth, the healing miracles are really, the important ones are just internal healing miracles, that you are made whole, that you're made complete, that you're made at peace in the midst of this. It's not really the body, it's the heart that is made whole, that is miraculously healed. And the toxin, the poison, is anger, and it must be let go of because it is just poisoning, just hurting you. Yeah.
Next question from the live stream is from Upasika Lake in Portland, Oregon, United States. Dear Ajahn, what guidance do you have for leaving something that is no longer serving you, letting go without aversion or rejection?
There's a nice saying by Nietzsche. One must separate from that which makes you say no again and again. It's a very nice saying. The Buddha says, and much earlier in time, also says something like that. It is better to go alone than with a fool for company. These two little phrases can change your life. It is better to go alone than with a fool for company. And that foolishness might be a job situation. It might be a personal relationship. It might be a neighborhood. It might be relatives. They have all the time in the world to be their obnoxious selves, and they're not feeling any distress at this. You are. So you need to take care of yourself and separate from that which makes you say no again and again. If you have to keep saying no, I don't want to do that. And sometimes you don't say it out loud. You say it to yourself, oh, I have to deal with this again. You need to separate from that. And so that's the urgency. But people don't separate because they're afraid that the unknown, being alone is the unknown. The way to do this, though, is to practice being alone and being well alone. Learning the art of solitude, so you don't have to be trapped in these situations where you're depending on very mixed company to give you some sort of relief from your own loneliness, and you end up associating with unwise people that are foolish, and and then you say, oh, it's problematic, this relationship, but I'm afraid to go alone. So that you have to move towards that capacity to go alone and be well in solitude. Yeah.
Next question is from Kwei Sitar in Melbourne, Australia. If a meditator capable of reaching jhana dies and ends up in a heaven below the jhana realm, can they access jhana in this new realm?
They might be able to, yes. It is possible. It's not excluded. In fact, there's a kind of a story around that, dying and going into the heavens is a kind of an impediment to the attainment of enlightenment. But you see in the suttas that the descriptions of devas that have attained enlightenment, they're enlightened and they're in, they have attained enlightenment in heaven. So I would say that jhanic possibilities are there as well. It's just that it seems to be that very pleasant sensory environments tend to be distracting to the practice of jhana. It's so pleasant and enjoyable that it's hard to get around to meditation. So in modern times, when you have all of these access to entertainment and good food and all kinds of sensory experiences, it may be harder to get around to meditation than it is in kind of more barren types of experiences where you don't have access to these floods of pleasant distractions. So this is the situation. You can understand it by just direct experience.
Next question is from Rafe in Lima, Peru. I'm currently in the South American rainforest and might stay here indefinitely. Regarding forest entities, do such things really exist, or is it only myth? Best advice for forest living.
Well, certainly the Buddhist cosmology is very clear that there are these beings in forests, and they're called Ruka Devas. There's also Bhuma Devas. So there's two kinds of angelic beings or spirit beings that live in it's a place like the rainforest. And some of them abide in the trees, and some of them are connected more to the earth. The Bhuma Devas are the earth devas, and the Ruka Devas are the tree spirits, tree angels. Imagine, it's a nice idea of tree angels and earth angels. These beings don't have a separate heaven to themselves. They partially use the kind of the worldly environment, but I wouldn't take it too. You don't expect them to be jumping around like a squirrel in a tree. Like, they're not like that. But some people, and of course, some people will be completely oblivious to this, but monks to this day have a rule that they are not to chop down or cut down a living tree. They're not to damage a living tree. And the reason for the rule is that a monk, before the rule was made, a monk cut down a tree, and there was a spirit living in the tree, and this act of cutting down the tree injured that spirit, and the spirit had a mother spirit, and that spirit was very angry at the monk and wanted to actually kill the monk, but instead went to the Buddha, and explained to the Buddha, this monk has cut down my tree and injured my child, and I wanted to kill him, but I thought I'd better go and talk to you, just complain. So the Buddha said, that's good that you did. It's really not bad karma killing the monk. But from now on, monks, do not cut down a living tree. There may be conscious spirits dwelling within these trees, so you are to abstain from that. So it's this is the account, and it's in the suttas. It's in the Vinaya, and so to this day, so it's pretty clear that it was a literal sense that there are living beings within these trees. In modern times, we've come back to even strict scientific biologists that study these things. They're starting to realize that the trees have a lot of what seems to be fairly intelligent life connections between the forest and the environment around them. There are some scientists who are on the liberal side that have a project to prove that trees are conscious, that they're conscious without a brain, that they don't have a brain, but they're conscious. And this is people with doctorates. Normally, science is also influenced by the culture around them, and would just sort of dismiss that idea ahead of time, but that's not really open-minded science. So let them experiment, let them demonstrate. If they can find consciousness in the trees, then let them find consciousness, whatever. Some would not even go there. You'd lose your grant at the university if you try that. But no, obviously the web of life in the forest, the entangled web of life, is very, very elaborate, and we're only understanding it now. Some very legitimate mainstream scientists are demonstrating this. They probably hesitate in talking about spirits living in the trees, but that's kind of the way Buddhism, the plant world has a low degree of, thought to have a kind of consciousness which does not reincarnate. It's not subject to karma and reincarnation. It's alive. Obviously, we agree with that. Plants are alive. But the Buddhism does not have the plant world in the realms of reincarnation karma. So, but there are beings that live in these trees. And we can see, of course, that trees have a huge amount of bird life, squirrel life, insect life, all kinds of, they contribute to human life, to animal life. They're just inseparable from the rest of life. They give shade, and they nurture other plants, and it's just a huge kind of range of interaction with other life. And most older cultures, North American Indian culture, African culture, Indian culture of the time, Chinese culture, have reverence for certain kinds of trees and certain kind of sacred groves where they report a sense of a conscious life abiding within the trees. So you'll have to, if you're sensitive to this, then you should allow it as a possibility. Others who are not sensitive can't detect any sense of that. But lots of people can't appreciate a poem either. They don't appreciate Bach or art or a good novel. They don't know what you're talking about. So others say, it's the most real thing you'll ever experience is a great poem. A vibrating string. What is a piece by Bach? A violin piece by Bach. It's just a bunch of vibrating strings, isn't it? I mean, from a scientific point of view, it's just vibrations in the air. But others say it has nothing to do with vibrations in the air. There's there's a world within this, and it's called music, and it's nothing to do with vibrations in the air. So this is the kind of territory we're talking about with the spirits that could be inhabiting these forests. But it's a beautiful thing to open to it and just allow your intuitions to not be too skeptical about your own intuitions about this. Yeah. Okay, we are done with our questions and answers today, and we will see you in the future.